Today for our four operations part of our maths, we're going to continue to look at multiplication. Now, last week a lot of people did really well with their multiplication, but quite a lot of us definitely still needed some practice. And as I talked about last week, the most important part of this is not just being able to do the written method, but actually knowing your times tables. So there is a written task for you to do on written multiplication today, but I also really want you to focus on choosing some of those times tables activities because they are so essential to make sure that you are able to do this, and they make things so much easier for you as your maths work gets trickier as you get older. So today we're going to be focusing on our multiplication of decimals. Now, this isn't actually a massive change. Nothing changes apart from the fact we've got our decimal point there, but it sometimes does seem to throw people slightly. So we're going to have a look at how we can do this. So I'm just going to write out my sum in long form. Now, most of you submitted your working out last week and did a great job. However, there are a few of you who are trying to do these mentally. Now that, I promise, is not going to work long term. You might get one or two right, but you need to do working out for sums like this. It is much more accurate. It's also really important to make sure you lay it out neatly. There was a lot of mistakes last week of people messing up carries. I know it's really hard when you don't have squared paper at home, but you can always use lined paper and turn it sideways. So I said that last week, but nobody really tried it. So what I mean by that is if you have a piece of lined paper, I'll actually just get one. So like this. Now I'm not going to write on this for the video because it's quite small and you'll not be able to see, but this is what you can do. So you would take, I'm just using a pink pen so you can see it a little bit more easily, and you would put your numbers here. So you would do 7.51 times 5, and then you would use your ruler, if you have something straight, even a bit of paper will do, to do your line underneath. Now I know it's not exactly squared paper, but it keeps your numbers in the correct columns so that when you do it, things are a little easier to see. So that's a really good tip for keeping it neat, even if you don't have squared paper at home. But let's go back and look at this sum here. So we have got 7.51 times 5. So you'll notice that I have laid it out. Now the 5 is actually with the hundreds. When you're multiplying, the number you're multiplying by, it doesn't actually matter. It needs to just go with the smallest digit, which in this case is the hundreds. It doesn't matter that that's a unit, it needs to go with whatever the smallest digit at the top is. So we'll start off, and the first thing I'm going to do is put my decimal point in. Now you'll notice the decimal point has stayed in exactly the same place. It does not move. Our decimal point cannot move, but our digits can. So we start off and we've got 1 times 5, which is 5. Then we've got 5 times 5, which is 25. So I put my 2 down and I put my carry over here. Now it's jumped over the decimal point, that's totally fine. Just moved it into the next number, that's all it is. 7 times 5 is 35, plus 2 is 37. So our correct answer is 37.55. I'm just going to put my decimal point down here. Okay, so now I'm going to do our second one. And I want you to pause me and give that a go for me. Okay, so let's do that together. So again, I'm setting it out nice and neatly. 1.59 times 3. So again, my first thing I'm going to do is put my decimal point exactly where it is. Just bring it down. So now I'm doing 3 times 9, which is 27, so I carry my 2. 5 times 3, which is 15, plus my 2, remember we're adding the carry, is 17, and carry my 1. 3 times 1 is 3, plus my 1 is 4. A lot of people were forgetting to add on your carries last week, and I know it's a bit odd when you're multiplying and then doing adding, but it's just something you need to keep practicing. So the correct answer for that one is 4.77. Now let's look at something that's slightly different. So for question 3, I'm going to have a number that looks like this. Okay, so we did a couple of these as extension questions last week, and I did notice it threw a few people because I think there's a 0 in the units digit. We don't change anything. If we remember that if we have decimals, we will need to keep the 0 in the units digit to show that there are no units, but we don't change anything. We just do our multiplication the same. So I'm going to write out my sum. I'll do that multiplied by 4. So 0.0541 times 4. And you can see I've put my 4 right with the smallest digit here. And again, I'm going to put my decimal point in exactly where it was to start with. 1 times 4 is 4. 4 times 4 is 16 and carry my 1. And look, I'm making sure it's really neat and lined up. 5 times 4 is 20, plus 1 is 21, carry my 2. 4 times 0 is 0, and that's important to remember that anything multiplied by 0 is always 0. So 4 times 0 is 0, and then we add our 2, so the answer would be 2. And then 4 times 0 is 0. Now you can see that my number has now got a digit here when it didn't before, but that's okay because it's got bigger. So the number has gotten bigger. And it doesn't matter even if there's still nothing in our units, we just write our 0 in there to hold the place. 0.2164. All right, so let's try another one just like that. So I want you to give this one a go yourself. Okay, so we've got 0.0199 times 2. Sorry, I said that a bit strange. 0.0199 times 2. So set that out and give it a go. Okay. So we've got 0.0199 times 2. And you can see that I always place my multiplication sign over at the side away from all my numbers. I do this if I'm doing a takeaway or an addition as well, even if there's space here for it. The reason I do this is because I don't need another sort of mark in here causing more confusion. I want to keep this nice and empty and nice and neat so that I can see my carries and I don't get muddled up and think this is a number or something. It's just nice to keep over at the side. So 9 times 2 is 18 and I carry my 1. Oh, decimal point in first. Again, we've got 9 times 2, which is 18, plus 1 more, so that's 19, and I carry my 1. 2 times 1 is 2, plus 1 is 3. 2 times 0 is 0, and 2 times 0 is 0. Okay, so our answer is 0.0398. Now, I want you to look carefully at this because this was something last week that I spoke about. 0.0199 has got 4 digits after the decimal point. This answer has got 4 digits after the decimal point. You should always have the same amount of digits after the decimal point as you started with. You can see this one's the same. Okay? Now, sometimes you might end up with an answer that looks like this. And you could actually shorten that to 0.04 because those zeros aren't showing us anything. But for this activity, it's best to just keep the double zeros because then we don't end up moving it into the wrong place. So this week you are going to be practicing multiplying your decimals using your written methods. And again, it is so important you know your times tables. Hopefully this video has shown you that actually nothing else has changed other than the fact I put my decimal point in to start with. We do exactly the same thing and we don't freak out just because it's a decimal number, okay? Don't panic, it's nothing different, it's just a decimal. So the last one I'm going to do is just to show you a money one because we've been working with money. Now most of you seem to be getting this really well, so I'm not too fussed, but I'm doing £1.79 times 8. So an example of that as a word problem would be like, I bought 8 packets of pasta and they were £1.79 each. How much was my total? So in total, I have to find 8 sets of £1.79. So I'll do that by putting my decimal point in first. 9 8s are 72. Carry my 7. 8 7s are 56, plus 7 is 63. Carry my 6. 8 1s is 8, plus 6 is 14. So my total would be £14.32. So give your maths questions for today a go using your decimals, and just remember nothing else is different other than you put your decimal point in to start with, and just like normal you make sure everything's really nice and neat to keep you right.